In this episode, we're stretching our minds and squeezing out style. We've got 5 crazy rides in all shapes and sizes. We go big with the best.
Standing next to those 9-foot tires, this thing towers over you.
Tips the scale at 9,000 pounds, big, bad, and rusty.
Show off small but serious.
If you can imagine a go-kart with license plates, that's about what it's like to drive.
The driver is the passenger, or you could say the passenger is the driver.
And cars that crush the competition.
It can go over cars, jump through caravans, it can go through water, it can do absolutely anything you ask it to.
So to have a sweet ride, I guess size doesn't matter. Our first ride because it's absolutely huge.
In 1959, it was the largest military vehicle made. This vehicle is extreme.
You're telling me, brother, it's crazy big.
Standing next to those 9-foot tires, this thing towers over you. This is our 1959 Lark LX. The reason why we bought the Lark LX is because it was big. This popped up on eBay, and we saw it, and we just had to have it.
Built in 1959 for the U.S. Army, the ironically named Lighter Amphibious Resupply Cargo, or Lark, is an absolute beast. The Lark swims in the ocean and dominates the land, and collector Jeff Lane snapped up one for just $75,000. But getting it from Florida to Nashville was not going to be easy. The trip took 21 days.
We had to get a tugboat to move it around the tip of Florida, through the Gulf, and up the Tombigbee and up the Cumberland River.
Safely sailed to Nashville. Jeff had one more job. Get it on land, baby.
The crane wasn't strong enough. It actually started bending, so we had to get a larger crane and a bigger crew to get it out of the water and onto land.
With the tough bit done, this Lark needed to go local. The streets of Nashville were its final mission.
So we needed to get permits from the city to take it through the streets in the middle of the night. And we also had to measure all of the power lines to make sure that the Lark was able to pass through anything in its way. Being the largest vehicle to ever drive in Nashville.
Usually it's tour buses crossing Music City, but none of them had tires this big.
These Firestones are actually 9 feet high. I could barely reach the top of them. They are just monsters. You could imagine the amount of rubber that went into making one of these. You could also imagine changing one of these things. I couldn't imagine. The Lark LX is driven by 4 Detroit diesel engines, 1 for each wheel. And these engines propelled 110 tons, plus the 60 tons of cargo that it would carry. Tanks, trucks, soldiers, anything. It's quite a feat. It has 2 propellers that give it a speed of about 7 knots. These props are huge.
When you get a ride this big, there's one thing you gotta do with it.
We used to give demonstrations on special days, and we used to drive it around the parking lot and drive it over cars, and it would completely flatten them.
I've definitely encountered some rides I would love to flatten.
This is one of the cars that the Lark had run over.
Awesome. So where can I get one?
These were made and used during the Vietnam War. After, instead of taking them back to the country, they just sank them. So there's only a few that we know of, this being one.
Looks like I'm out of luck on the Lark. From a beast to a baby-sized beast. pocket rocket may be tinier than a classic VW Beetle,
Small, light, hilarious. You can't drive it and not smile.
but it packs one hell of a punch.
If you can imagine a go-kart with license plates, that's about what it's like to drive.
It is truly one of the most entertaining machines I've ever had the pleasure of operating.
David checked this out in Japan, loved it, and mailed one direct back to the USA.
This is my 1991 Honda Beat. We flew to Japan, landed, and I got on a train to go look at this car. And I took it for a 5-minute test drive, and I came back and I went, here's the cash. There's something so fantastic about a high-revving, naturally aspirated engine that it's hard to put your finger on, but it just makes me super happy inside.
Simple stuff, but getting it to Texas is not as simple as you think.
Importing cars into the US is a nightmare, and I don't recommend anybody do it.
David splashed out just under $6,000 for the Beat, plus another $1,800 to get it home. With its high-tech race car-inspired engine, bodywork styled by the legendary Italian-designed firm Pininfarina, and sports car-like handling, this tiny car proves that good things come in small packages.
So to give you reference, it's small. It's really small. It is mid-engined, so there's nothing under the front here. All you've got is a spare tire. It didn't have one when I bought the car, so I just bought a spare tire off of a Honda Civic, and it works. It fits. This is the trunk. This is all the storage space you get. If you do need to get access to the engine, well, what you can do instead is you can take the glass, fold it back, and then straight down the center here, there's an access panel that you can pull off. With the top up, my hair's a little big, so I can feel it hitting the top. It's very much so a driver's car through and through. It's obvious as soon as you sit, because the center console that comes down the middle here is not in the center. It's actually offset to the left to give the driver more room at the sacrifice of passenger space. Toss the whole thing back and you're good to go. That's it, tops down, and now suddenly it's a much more spacious car.
In Japan, the Honda Beat formed part of the special K car class. These were micro cars that were affordable, easy to repair, low tax, and made specifically for the domestic car market.
They have very stringent regulations on how long the car can be, how wide the car can be, and what the engine displacement can be.
The Beat's pretty badass. It took the K-car restrictions and created a speedy convertible, referencing the lightweight, high-revving sports cars that Honda founder Soichiro Honda designed back in the 60s.
It was the last car that Honda signed off on before he passed. So this was, in some respects, depending on who you talk to, this is the last true Honda. The car itself is a lot of fun to drive and fantastic to own, but the history of it also gives it kind of that emotional connection to it.
Man, David's love for his baby Beat is infectious. I gotta admit, kind of cheering up.
It sounds amazing. The intake is where all of the amazing sound comes from, because there's 3 individual throttle bodies sitting on the engine instead of one big one. And the distance from the throttle plate to the actual cylinder is incredibly short. And that means that any sound that cylinder is going to make as it pulls air in or as it does its combustion, we're hearing directly. And that's that insane, phenomenal sound that we're hearing every time I boot it. Speaking of which, I think it's time to give it the full beans again, so here we go.
The sweet sounds of pure power, music to my ears.
It has probably one of the greatest shifting feels of any car I've ever driven. The steering is so immediate. Everything about it is egging you on to enjoy the feeling that this machine creates. To get something like this that's affordable, that's reliable, that's tiny, nimble, and just puts a huge smile on your face everywhere you go is really rare. It's this feeling inside of what you want from your experience of driving. And that is what this car delivers in spades. It was intended to make you smile on the inside. It's one of the few cars out there that can make a normal person feel like a Formula One racing driver.
From small and speedy to a monster that's mighty. Now, you don't expect to find many championship-winning monster trucks in the heart of England.
This is one of my most favourite events. It's the highlight of my year, the UK Monster Truck National.
But that's exactly where you'll come fang to fang with this 6-ton US import.
It can go over cars, jump through caravans, it can go through water. It can do absolutely anything you ask it to.
This is Swamp Thing.
When you're behind the wheel on the monster truck, it's the best feeling. Most people think if you're going to hit something, you put on the brakes. But that's the last thing you do with a monster truck. So as you come into the monster truck, you have to go hard on the throttle so it lifts the front wheels over the car and then you drive through the obstacle that you're driving through.
From 8 years old, my man Tony fell in love with the mighty monster trucks when he saw them on TV. Flash forward to only 20 years ago, and Tony shipped in a battered beast from the US and renamed it Swamp Thing. 2 months getting it into shape, and it can now do 0 to 60 in just 4 seconds.
When I first got something, the first thing I did to it was absolutely strip it down to a bare chassis, got the thing sandblasted, gone round, replaced the bits that I needed to replace because there was quite a few broken parts on it. If I had to physically replace every part on this monster truck, I'm up to about £250,000.
That's some serious bucks.
It's actually a Ford F350 Super Duty body, so I actually make all the body on the monster truck. I make nearly all the parts on the monster truck. Believe it or not, it's just a fiberglass skin that gives it its shape. Okay, so this is the heart of the beast. This engine is just under 10 litres. Unlike conventional vehicles, we don't run on petrol, we don't run on diesel, we run on methanol, which is a biofuel, so we're environmentally friendly. The only problem is, when we're on full throttle, we only do 56 metres to the gallon.
Man, this gator is thirsty.
So let's get into the cab. Okay, there isn't too much in here, really. There's a little joystick here, that's what does the rear steering. Got a rev counter, oil pressure gauge, oil temperature gauge. The other thing in here is the gear stick. So the gear stick on the monster truck is a ratchet gear stick. We go first, second, third. That's how fast it goes through the gears. So when we're in the monster truck, you're physically bolted in here really tight. You've got a helmet on, you cannot see a lot. If I'm doing really big jumps, I'll wear a neck brace in there as well. You feel invincible.
Tony's fans love his wheelies and donuts, but it's the jumps that gets him going.
In the right arena, we can actually make these things fly. The highest I've jumped Swamp Thing is 42 feet in the air, and now I was meant to land on the landing ramp, but I jumped it so high, I actually missed the landing ramp, and I can tell you, it smarts. It really hurt. It shook my feelings out. Wow.
Painful, dude, but despite the injuries, Tony's never happier than when he's on the road with Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing is probably the most well-known UK monster truck. These fans, I really appreciate coming here because they actually keep me going. I still absolutely buzz all the time. Love it.
Our next ride is so small, you don't even need a driver's license for it.
I collect the rarest of the rare.
A ride that can park anywhere and is the ultimate head turner.
This is the creme de la creme, my 1975 Aoma Mini Contessa. I think I've owned 430 cars in my lifetime. This is the smallest car I own. I've never been a prince, but I really enjoy driving it.
The Mini Aoma gives smiles for every mile. Built in France in the 1970s, the Acoma's engine size took advantage of French law and allowed anyone over the age of 14 to drive it. Although only hitting a low speed, because the Aoma is so small, this thing feels fast. But how did car collector Howard get his hands on something so small?
I had never heard of this vehicle until I purchased it in December of 2020. It was one of the cutest cars I've ever seen. It's all fiberglass. The engine is a Sachs 47cc engine, 1 cylinder, 2 cycle. This car was 50 years ahead of the Tesla. This had a Falcon door. You could be an inch away from another car. You just lift the Falcon door and get out.
Good things come in small packages. Hit me up with the features, Howard.
It has no power steering. It has no radio, no air conditioning, no power door locks, no cruise control. It has 2 large caster wheels in the front. That keeps the car from tipping over. My caster wheels have never touched the ground.
Brother, I'm relieved. Let's hop in this baby and take it for a spin.
One leg on this side for the accelerator pedal. The other leg on this side for the brake pedal. The horn. Headlights. And this is the only automotive hood that you're gonna hold with 1 finger. What else would anybody want in a car?
Amen to that.
Okay. The best thing about driving this car, you see everything. You see every worm, you see every bird, you see every piece of grass grow. The driver is the passenger, or you could say the passenger is the driver.
Piece of practicality, but man, this ride seems sketchy in size for the open road.
It could be conceived that way, but I'm not scared driving it on the road. It goes to 60 kilometers, which is 36 miles per hour. I get thumbs up, I get waves, I get toots of horns. Everybody just loves the Aoma. I want some flair in my life, and one of the things I enjoy doing is driving. Someday I'll sell it, yes, because I'm too tall to be buried in it.
Long live the mini Aoma. From a compact car to a rusty rat rod. If you own a work vehicle, most of the time it's clean, practical, safe. But that ain't an ultimate ride.
This is a really mean, gnarly work truck. Big, bad, and rusty.
A ride that looks cool, but does the dirty stuff too.
You can take it to the hardware store and pick up the lumber for the project you're working on, or take your wife or your girlfriend downtown and have everybody stare at you while you're driving by. It's a fully functional vehicle. It does it all. Rat Rod 3.
Man, this is one unique worker, a crazy creation.
If you've watched any Mad Max movie and those big, bad, rusty trucks, that's really what inspired this vehicle.
Inspired by the big screen, Brian has pulled out all the stops and in just 3 months built a star. Rat Rod 3 is a crazy mix of cast-offs for donor rides and new parts made by hand. His biggest project to date, this Rat Rod tested all of his skills, but surely this brilliant build don't come cheap.
How much money is in Rat Rod 3? It's kind of tough to say. I think the real cost of what's in Rat Rod 3 is the blood, sweat, and tears that went into building it. There's a lot of people that contributed to it. I couldn't put a dollar value on that. The body itself, I remember pulling it out of the swamp down in South Carolina. We got it for free because the guy wanted it out of his yard.
That's recycling, baby.
The way we built this truck was probably a little unorthodox. We sort of just went at it. We started with building the chassis. We knew we wanted it to be a car hauler as well as a utility truck, and then the drivetrain, and then the body, and then fine-tuning the whole thing.
Their approach may have been unorthodox, but this truck rocks.
This whole front section, this is all hand-built. We really wanted it to be nice and tough, being able to push things around if we needed to in that Mad Max style. When this thing's coming down the road, you see that furrowed brow, it just looks mean and evil coming at you. Look at this military cab. Most people don't realize it, but this cab's been stretched 6 inches to give you leg room. The cab and the hood is pretty much the only thing we're able to salvage from this vehicle when we went and picked it up. Everything you see here is all hand fabricated, from the fenders, the running boards, the top.
Attention to detail creates ultimate rides.
The steel bed literally has hundreds of feet of weld. Everything is welded in all the way around. It's sturdy and it's tougher than any bed you're gonna find on a pickup truck today. For Rat Rod 3, we chose a diesel engine for several reasons, but the biggest one is reliability and power. These 12-valve Cummins are known to last 1,000,000 miles plus, so we wanted to have something that we knew that we could count on. It's not a stock diesel by any means. Got Hungry diesel injectors in it, got the Air Dog fuel supply. Overall, it does a really good job pulling this truck around.
Man, no stone has been left unturned. Even under the hood, it's mean.
Rat Rod 3 is such an extreme vehicle because of its versatility. Its hauling capacity, the horsepower, the torque that it has for taking your other cars to the car show or whatever you need to do. It's sitting on airbags, so you can slam it all the way down to the ground and look cool cruising down the interstate. It tips the scale at 9,000 pounds, so it's a big, beefy truck. Top speed, it's probably around 100 miles per hour. We've had it around 90, and I personally don't really want to go much faster in it.
Brian has built a beauty, man. It is mean, powerful, and heavy. This thing is a workhorse.
This is the ultimate ride because you can do so much with it. You get in the truck, you drive it, and you go have fun.
Man, it just goes to show you, doesn't matter what size it is. If you can put wheels on it and fit an engine in it, then brother, man, it can ride. We'll see you next time on Ultimate Rides.